The alarm sirens cut through the afternoon air like a knife. Dae-hyun Kim dropped his tools and ran toward the window of the engineering bay. Outside, smoke rose in thick black columns from somewhere beyond the eastern ridge. The other workers crowded around, their faces pressed against the glass. "What is it?" someone asked. "Looks like a crash," another worker replied. "Big one, too." Dae-hyun grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. His supervisor called after him, but he didn't stop. Something in his chest told him to move, to help. That's just who he was. At 32 years old, he'd spent his whole life doing what felt right, even when it wasn't convenient. The mining colony of New Han-seong sat on a dusty frontier planet far from Earth. 300 people lived here, drilling for rare minerals that powered faster than light engines. It was hard work, but honest. Dae-hyun liked the simplicity of it. He fixed things, he built things, he solved problems. But this problem was different. By the time he reached the crash site, a crowd had gathered. They stood at a safe distance, watching flames consume what looked like a ship. But it wasn't human. The design was all wrong. Smooth curves instead of angular panels, materials that shimmered even through the smoke. Strange symbols marked the hull. "It's alien," someone whispered. "Stay back," the colony administrator shouted. He was a nervous man named Pilsu, always worried about regulations and reports. "We don't know what's inside. Could be dangerous. Could be disease. We need to wait for the proper authorities." Dae-hyun pushed through the crowd. He could hear something over the roar of the flames, a sound, high-pitched, almost like crying. "Someone's in there," he said. Pilsu grabbed his arm. "You don't know that. And even if there is, we can't risk contamination. What if they're hostile?" Dae-hyun pulled free. "What if they're not?" He ran toward his equipment locker near the mining equipment. His hands worked fast, grabbing a heat suit, a breathing mask, and a fire suppression unit. The suit was designed for working near molten ore. It would have to be enough. "Dae-hyun, don't be stupid!" someone yelled. But he was already running. The heat hit him like a wall when he got close. Even through the suit, he could feel it trying to cook him alive. The ship's fuel burned with colors he'd never seen before, blues and greens mixed with orange, beautiful and deadly. He found an opening in the hull. Metal had twisted apart on impact. Inside, the smoke was thick. His mask filtered the air, but he could still taste something chemical and wrong. The layout made no sense to his human mind. Corridors curved in ways that seemed impossible. Controls and panels glowed with alien script. The crying sound grew louder. Dae-hyun followed it deeper into the ship. His legs carried him through rooms he didn't understand, past technology he couldn't name. The heat increased with every step. Sweat ran down his face inside the mask. His skin felt like it was burning. Then he found her. She was small, maybe the size of a human teenager. Her skin had a pale blue tint, and patterns glowed softly beneath the surface. Bioluminescent markings, his mind noted absently. She wore formal robes, now torn and burned. Her eyes were larger than human eyes, and they stared at him with confusion and fear. She said something in a language he didn't know. The words sounded musical even through her obvious pain. "I'm here to help," Dae-hyun said, knowing she couldn't understand. He moved toward her, but she shrank back. She pointed at him, at his human face visible through the mask, and said something urgent. A warning, maybe, or a question about what he was. There was no time to explain. Part of the ceiling collapsed behind him, sending sparks everywhere. The fire was spreading fast. In minutes, this whole section would be an inferno. Dae-hyun did the only thing he could. He reached out slowly, showing his empty hands. Then he pointed at the flames, at the exit, at her. The meaning was clear. Stay and die, or trust him, and maybe live. She hesitated for only a moment. Then she nodded. When he lifted her, he was surprised by how light she felt. alien biology, different gravity on her home world maybe. She cried out in pain. Burns covered her arms and legs, but she wrapped her arms around his neck and held on. Getting out was harder than getting in. The path he'd taken was now blocked by fallen debris. Dae-hyun had to find another way, carrying the alien girl while dodging flames and falling metal. His suit started to fail. He could feel the heat reaching his skin. Blisters formed on his hands and neck. The alien girl buried her face against his shoulder. She was trembling. "Almost there," he told her, even though she couldn't understand. "Just hold on." He found a weak point in the hull and kicked it. Once, twice. On the third kick, the metal gave way. Fresh air rushed in, and he stumbled out into the daylight. His legs gave out. He fell to his knees, still holding the alien girl, and then toppled sideways. People rushed forward. Hands grabbed him, pulled him away from the burning ship. Someone took the alien girl from his arms. He tried to protest, to make sure she was okay, but his body had nothing left to give. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was the alien girl's face. She was looking at him with those large eyes. Her lips moved, saying something he couldn't hear. Then everything went black. When the ship finally exploded, Dae-hyun didn't see it. He was already unconscious, his body shutting down from the burns and smoke inhalation. Medical teams worked on both him and the alien girl, fighting to save 2 lives that shouldn't have survived. In the days that followed, news of the rescue spread. Messages were sent to Earth, to the Colonial Council, and somehow to the alien empire the girl came from. An empire called the Velrans. An empire that humans had barely heard of before this day. But Dae-hyun Kim didn't know any of that yet. He didn't know that his simple act of courage had set something in motion, something that would change not just his life, but the future of humanity itself. He just knew that someone needed help, and he couldn't walk away. That was enough. Dae-hyun woke to the sound of machines beeping steadily. His whole body felt like one massive bruise. When he tried to move his hands, pain shot up his arms. Bandages covered most of his skin. The smell of medical gel filled his nose. "Easy now," a nurse said, appearing beside his bed. "You've been out for 3 days. Your burns were severe." 3 days. The memory came back slowly. The ship, the fire, the alien girl. "Is she alive?" His voice came out rough and dry. The nurse smiled. "The alien? Yes, she's alive. Thanks to you. She's been asking about you every day. Actually, she's driving the medical staff crazy. Wants to see you as soon as possible." Dae-hyun tried to sit up, but failed. His body wasn't ready yet. "The colony administrator wants to talk to you too," the nurse continued. "And apparently, there are some very important people coming from very far away. You've caused quite a stir, Mr. Kim." He didn't understand what she meant. He'd just done what anyone should do. How was that causing a stir? 2 more days passed before he could sit up without help. His burns were healing faster than expected. The doctor said they'd used some alien medicine that the girl had insisted they try. Apparently, it worked on human tissue just fine. On the 5th day, they let her visit. She entered his room quietly, accompanied by 2 human guards and a translator device floating beside her. She looked much better than the last time he'd seen her. The burns on her skin were almost healed, leaving only faint marks. Her bioluminescent patterns glowed softly, pulsing in what seemed like a gentle rhythm. She was smaller than he remembered, maybe 5 feet tall at most. Her features were delicate, almost fragile-looking, but her eyes held an intelligence that made her seem older than her appearance suggested. Those large eyes fixed on him, and she said something in her musical language. The translator device hummed for a moment, then spoke in flat, mechanical English. "You saved my life. I am Lyra Veltorin. I owe you a debt that can never be repaid." Dae-hyun shifted uncomfortably in his bed. "You don't owe me anything." I just did what was right. Lyra listened to the translation, then shook her head. She spoke again more urgently this time. In my culture, this is not a small thing. You risked your life for a stranger, an alien stranger. You did not know if I was dangerous. You did not know if saving me would bring you reward or punishment. But you came into the fire anyway. Anyone would have done the same, Dae-hyun said. The translator passed his words along, and Lyra made a sound that might have been a laugh. It sounded like wind chimes. No, she said. Not anyone. Most beings value their own life above strangers. This is natural. This is logical. What you did was neither natural nor logical. It was brave. She moved closer to his bed. One of the guards tensed, but she ignored him. She reached into her robes and pulled out a small crystal. It glowed with inner light. My father is coming, she said. High Chancellor Morin Veltorin, leader of the Velren Empire. He wants to meet the human who saved his daughter's life. Dae-hyun felt his stomach sink. Your father is what? The High Chancellor, the leader of my people. He rules over 147 worlds. Oh no, Dae-hyun muttered. This is going to be a problem. Lyra tilted her head, curious. Why would this be a problem? You are a hero. My father wishes to honor you. I'm not a hero. I'm an engineer. I fix broken equipment. I don't meet with leaders of empires. You are a hero whether you accept the title or not, Lyra said. The translator couldn't quite capture the emotion in her voice, but Dae-hyun could see it in her expression. Gratitude, respect, something else he couldn't name. Over the next few days, Dae-hyun learned more about Lyra and her people. She visited him every day, sometimes for hours. She told him about the Velren Empire, about their history and culture. They were an old race, she explained. Very old. They had achieved faster-than-light travel when humans were still living in caves. We have long lives, she said. My father is over 800 years old by your counting. I am considered young at 93. Dae-hyun tried not to show his shock. She looked like a teenager. The Velrens, Lyra explained, valued honor above all things. Their society was built on codes and obligations. When someone saved your life, you owed them a debt that extended beyond death. It wasn't just personal, it was sacred. But I don't want anything from you, Dae-hyun insisted. That makes the debt even greater, Lyra replied. She also told him why she'd been on that ship. She was a junior diplomat, traveling with a small delegation to observe a distant system. They'd been passing through human space when their engines failed, some kind of malfunction. They'd tried to make an emergency landing on New Hanseong but crashed instead. The others didn't survive, she said quietly. Only me. Because of you. Dae-hyun didn't know what to say to that. He'd saved one life, but couldn't save the others. It didn't feel like victory. News of the impending visit spread through the colony. Administrator Pil-soo became increasingly nervous. He visited Dae-hyun's room several times, asking strange questions. Did Dae-hyun say anything that might have offended the alien? Did he make any promises? Did he understand the political implications? I just pulled her out of a fire, Dae-hyun said. There are no political implications. Pil-soo laughed, but it sounded stressed. You saved the daughter of the most powerful being in the Velren Empire. Everything about this is political. Earth sent messages, too. The Colonial Council wanted detailed reports. Military intelligence wanted to know everything about the Velrens. Scientists wanted to study the alien technology. Everyone wanted something from Dae-hyun. He just wanted to go back to work. But that wasn't going to happen. Not anymore. On the 10th day after the crash, sensors detected ships entering the system. Not one ship, many ships, a fleet. Velren warships, massive and beautiful, dropped out of faster-than-light travel near New Hanseong. The colony went into a panic. Were they being invaded? Was this retaliation for something? Lyra assured everyone that her father came in peace, but she also warned them that he would come with full ceremony. The Velrens did not do things simply when honor was involved. Dae-hyun watched from his hospital window as the largest ship descended. It was like watching a small moon land. The vessel glowed with those same bioluminescent patterns that marked Lyra's skin, graceful and powerful at the same time. "He's here," Lyra said, standing beside Dae-hyun. "My father. He will want to see you immediately." "I'm wearing a hospital gown," Dae-hyun protested. Lyra made that wind chime laugh again. "He will not care. You saved his daughter while wearing a mining suit and heat protection. The clothes do not matter. The action does." Dae-hyun took a deep breath. His burns still hurt. His body was still recovering. But he could walk now, even if it was painful. "Okay," he said. "Let's get this over with." Lyra's expression became serious. "Dae-hyun Kim, you do not understand yet. This will not be over for a very long time. What you did has changed things. Between you and me, yes. But also between your people and mine." She was right. Dae-hyun didn't understand. Not yet. But he would soon. The landing platform had been cleared for the Velren delegation. Every person in the colony stood watching from behind barriers. Human security forces looked nervous, their weapons ready but pointed down. Nobody knew what to expect. Dae-hyun stood at the front, still wearing bandages under his formal clothes. Administrator Pilsu stood beside him, sweating despite the cool air. Lyra waited on his other side, her posture perfect and formal. "Remember," Pilsu whispered urgently, "be respectful. Don't make any sudden movements. Let them speak first. Don't promise anything without consulting Earth authorities." "I'll just be myself," Dae-hyun said. Pilsu looked like he might faint. The Velron ship's door opened with a sound like singing crystal. Light poured out, and figures emerged. They were all tall, taller than Lyra. Their robes were more elaborate, covered in symbols that glowed and shifted. But it was the figure at the center that drew every eye. High Chancellor Morin Vel-Torin was massive for a Velren, nearly 7 feet tall. His frame somehow both delicate and imposing. His skin glowed brighter than the others, patterns swirling across his face and hands like living art. His eyes, the same large shape as Lyra's, held centuries of experience. He walked with absolute authority. Every movement was precise and deliberate. The other Velrens followed in perfect formation. Guards flanked him, carrying weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. The entire group stopped 10 feet from Dae-hyun. For a long moment, nobody moved. The silence stretched. Pilsu started to step forward, probably to give some official greeting, but Lyra put a hand on his arm and shook her head. Then Morin spoke. His voice was deep and resonant, filling the air like thunder. The translator devices activated immediately, converting his words. "I am Morin Vel-Torin, High Chancellor of the Velron Empire, Guardian of the 147 Worlds, Keeper of the Ancient Codes." He paused. "I am also a father." His eyes fixed on Dae-hyun. "You are the human called Dae-hyun Kim." It wasn't a question, but Dae-hyun answered anyway. "Yes, sir." "You entered a burning vessel to save a life. You did not know who was inside. You did not know if they were friend or enemy. You risked your own life for a stranger." "Anyone would have done the same," Dae-hyun said. Maureen's expression changed. His eyes widened slightly, and he looked at his daughter. Lyra nodded, as if confirming something. "He truly believes this," Maureen said, speaking to his delegation. "Remarkable." The High Chancellor took a step forward, then another. He was now directly in front of Dae-hyun, towering over him. Pilsu made a small noise of fear. Then Morin Vel-Torin, ruler of 147 worlds, did something that shocked everyone present. He bowed. Not a small bow, a deep formal bow that put his head below Daehyun's chest. The other Velrans immediately followed suit. All of them. Guards, advisors, even Lyra. Every alien on the platform bowed to a human engineer from a frontier mining colony. Daehyun stood frozen. This felt wrong. All wrong. "Please," he said. "Please stand up. You don't need to do this." Morin rose, but his expression was solemn. "In our culture, we have a tradition called the Crimson Honor. It is given only in the rarest of circumstances. When one being shows courage so pure, so selfless, that it transcends normal understanding. You have earned this honor, Daehyun Kim." One of the Velrans stepped forward, carrying a small box. Morin opened it, revealing a crystal similar to what Lyra had shown Daehyun, but larger and more brilliant. It pulsed with red light. "This marks you as a friend to the Velran Empire. Forever. What is ours is yours. Any world, any resource, any technology, you need only ask." Daehyun stared at the crystal. It was beautiful. Probably worth more than the entire mining colony, maybe more than most planets. "I don't want anything," he said. Maureen's expression became unreadable. "Nothing?" "Well," Daehyun hesitated. "Actually, there is something, but not for me." "Name it." "This colony and many others like it, we don't have great medical facilities. People get hurt. Sometimes they die because we can't treat them properly. If you have medical technology you could share, that would help a lot of people." The silence that followed was absolute. Every Velran stared at Daehyun. Morin's face showed something that might have been shock. "You ask for nothing personal? No wealth? No power? No land?" "What would I do with those things?" Daehyun asked. "I'm an engineer. I like fixing things and helping people. Better medical equipment means I can help more people." Maureen turned to his advisors and spoke rapidly in his own language, too fast for the translators. The advisors looked equally stunned. One of them pulled out a device and started recording everything. The High Chancellor looked back at Daehyun. "Your request is granted. We will provide medical technology to your colonies, not just the basics, the advanced systems we use for our own people." "Thank you," Daehyun said. "That means a lot." "But I cannot leave this at just one gift," Morin continued. "The Crimson Honor demands more. You must accept something personal as well. It is tradition." Daehyun shifted uncomfortably. "Really, I don't need anything." "Then I will decide." Morin gestured to Lyra. "My daughter wishes to remain on your world for a time, to learn about your people and your culture. Will you serve as her guide and protector?" That was not what Daehyun expected. "Guide? I'm not a diplomat or a teacher." "You are the being who taught my daughter that courage and kindness exist beyond our own species. Who better to show her more?" Lyra stepped forward. "I would like this very much, if you agree." How could he say no to that? "Okay, I'll help however I can." Morin nodded, satisfied. "Then it is settled, but know this, Daehyun Kim. I am leaving scholars and military advisors here as well. They have a mission." "What mission?" "To study your species, to understand what kind of beings produce individuals like you." Maureen's expression became serious. "We Velrons have existed for thousands of your years. We have met many species across many stars. But never have we seen what you did. Selfless courage for a complete stranger. We must know if this is common among humans, or if you are unique." "I'm not unique," Daehyun protested. "Really. Any firefighter or rescue worker would have done the same thing. It's not that special." Maureen exchanged looks with his advisors again. "Firefighter? Rescue worker? These are common professions among your people?" "Sure. Every city has them. People who run toward danger to help others. It's normal." The Velrans began talking among themselves in rapid, urgent tones. Morin held up a hand for silence. "We will learn more about this. In the meantime, know that you have the eternal gratitude of the Velran Empire." He placed a hand over his chest in what seemed to be a salute. "You saved my daughter. That makes you family by our codes. And family we protect." The formal ceremony continued for another hour. Gifts were exchanged, documents were signed, and official words were spoken. But Dae-hyun barely paid attention. His mind was stuck on something Morin had said. The Velrans wanted to study humanity, to understand what made humans tick. That seemed like a good thing on the surface, cultural exchange and all that. But Dae-hyun couldn't shake a feeling of unease. What would they find when they looked at human history? Would they see the courage and kindness? Or would they see the wars, the violence, the darkness? Humans were complicated. Yes, they ran into fires to save strangers. But they also hurt each other in terrible ways. Would the Velrans understand that complexity? Or would they judge humanity by one standard or the other? Later that night, after the Velrans had returned to their ship, Dae-hyun sat alone in his quarters. Lyra had gone to arrange her extended stay. Administrator Pilsu was busy dealing with all the new agreements and protocols. A message came through on his personal device. It was from Earth. The Colonial Council wanted to speak with him directly. So did several government officials. And apparently, news of the rescue had spread. He was famous now. People were calling him a hero. Dae-hyun deleted the messages. He didn't want fame. He didn't want to be a hero. He just wanted things to go back to normal. But deep down, he knew they never would. Something had been set in motion. Something bigger than one man pulling one alien from a fire. He just didn't know how big yet. The Velran research ship orbited New Hanseong like a silent moon. Inside, dozens of scholars worked day and night, analyzing data about humanity. They accessed Earth's public databases, studied historical records, and watched thousands of hours of human media. What they found disturbed them deeply. Scholar Niven Vel Cross was the first to notice the pattern. He'd been reviewing human literature when something caught his attention. Story after story featured characters who sacrificed themselves for others, heroes who died protecting strangers. Ordinary people who became extraordinary in moments of crisis. "This cannot be correct," he muttered, checking his translations again. But the data was clear. He took his findings to the senior researcher, a stern woman named Soren Vel Marth. She had studied alien species for 3 centuries and thought she'd seen everything. "Look at these texts," Niven said, displaying them on a holographic screen. "This one is called the Iliad. It's over 3,000 years old. The hero dies fighting for his friends and his people. Here, Romance of the Three Kingdoms, another ancient text, full of warriors sacrificing themselves for loyalty and honor." "All warrior cultures have such stories," Soren replied. "This proves nothing." "But it's not just warriors. Look at this. Modern human news reports." He pulled up dozens of articles. A teacher dies protecting students from a shooter. A stranger jumps into frozen water to save a drowning child. A firefighter enters a collapsing building to rescue a pet. These happen regularly, constantly. Soren leaned closer. "Define regularly." "Multiple incidents per day, across their entire planet. And these are just the ones considered newsworthy. There are professions entirely dedicated to this behavior. Emergency responders, as Dae-hyun Kim called them." Soren's bioluminescent patterns flickered, a sign of confusion. "Professions? You mean these humans trained specifically to put themselves in danger for strangers?" "Yes. It's considered honorable work. They have schools for it. Millions of humans dedicate their lives to it." "That's madness." "That's humanity, apparently." Over the following days, the research team dug deeper. Military analyst Torenvel Hask examined human warfare. What he found made him call an emergency meeting with High Chancellor Morin. "Sir, I must report something critical," Torin said, his voice tight with concern. "Human military capabilities are far beyond what we initially assessed." Morin listened from his private chamber aboard the flagship. "Explain." "I've studied their combat history. Humans have been at war with each other almost constantly for their entire recorded history. They've refined killing into a science. But that's not what concerns me most." "Then what does?" "Their ability to endure casualties. Sir, in one conflict they call World War II, humans lost over 70 million of their own kind. 70 million, and they kept fighting. No surrender, no collapse. They just kept going." Moran's patterns dimmed. "That's impossible. No species can sustain such losses and maintain combat effectiveness." "Humans can, and did, multiple times throughout their history. They call it total war. When humans decide something must be done, they will pay almost any price to achieve it." Another researcher entered. "Sir, I have information about Earth itself, the planet humans evolved on." "Go on," Morin said. "We've classified it as a Class 9 hazard world. The gravity is 30% higher than our homeworld. The atmosphere has higher oxygen content, which supports larger predators. The disease load is extreme. There are thousands of microorganisms that can kill a human, and humans evolved anyway. How is this possible? Their immune systems are incredibly aggressive. They have to be. But it gets worse. Earth has extreme weather, multiple climate zones, and geological instability. Humans evolved in one of the most hostile environments we've ever documented for intelligent life." Morin stood, pacing his chamber. "And Daehyun Kim is a product of this world. His people are adapted to survive in conditions that would kill most of us." "Yes, sir. When he ran into that burning ship, he was already wearing what amounts to weighted training armor just by existing in his own body. And his mind is conditioned by a species that had to fight for survival every single day. The pieces were coming together, but they painted a picture the Velrans didn't want to see." Scholar Soren presented her final report a week later. She stood before High Chancellor Morin and his full council, her expression grave. "We have analyzed human nature extensively," she began. "Our findings are conclusive. Humans are simultaneously the most dangerous and most compassionate species we've ever encountered." She displayed images of human history, wars and peace treaties, destruction and rebuilding, cruelty and kindness, existing side by side. They are capable of terrible violence against each other, yes, but they are also capable of extraordinary altruism. The two traits exist together, inseparable. They fight fiercely, but they also protect fiercely. They can hate, but they can also love with an intensity that defies logic. "What does this mean for us?" Morin asked. "It means Daehyun Kim is not an aberration. He is a perfect example of human potential. When a human decides you are worthy of protection, they will die for you. But if they decide you are a threat, they will fight with a ferocity that our own people abandoned millennia ago." Military analyst Torin added his assessment. "I've run combat simulations. Human forces versus our own. The results are disturbing. In every scenario, humans demonstrate higher tolerance for casualties, better adaptability, and more creative tactics. They don't break under pressure. They thrive in it." "Are you saying they would defeat us in a war?" one council member asked. "I'm saying we should never find out," Torin replied. "Humans haven't even achieved large-scale interstellar capability yet. They're still confined to their local systems, but when they expand, and they will expand, they will be a force unlike anything the galaxy has seen." Morin absorbed this information silently. His patterns pulsed slowly, a sign of deep thought. "How many species have we evaluated over the centuries?" he asked. 217, sir," Soren answered. And how many would you rate as more potentially dangerous than humans? None, sir. Not a single one. The council chamber fell silent. The implications were clear and terrifying. Finally, Morin spoke. Then we have only one logical path forward. We must ensure that humans never become our enemy. We must establish bonds so strong that our peoples become intertwined. We must make them our friends, our allies, our family. Some will say we should eliminate the threat before it grows, one advisor said carefully. Those people are fools, Morin snapped. Do you not understand what we've learned? Humans respond to kindness with loyalty, but respond to aggression with overwhelming force. If we attack them now, yes, we might win. But we would unite every human against us. And eventually, they would make us pay for it. Perhaps not in our lifetime, but in our children's or grandchildren's lifetimes. Humans don't forget, and they don't forgive existential threats. He looked at the data again, at the images of Dae-hyun pulling Lyra from the fire. No, we will do this properly. We will offer friendship. We will share knowledge. We will build trust. And perhaps when the darkness comes, we will have allies who will fight beside us with the same courage they showed in their own survival. Darkness, sir? Soren asked. Morin's expression grew somber. You've all seen the reports from our border regions. The Kreth are expanding. They are ruthless, numerous, and they see us as weak. They're not wrong. We've grown soft over centuries of peace. Our people panic in combat. We retreat when we should stand firm. He gestured to the images of human warfare. But humans? They've never stopped fighting. They're training themselves constantly, competing with each other, pushing themselves to extremes. They call it sports, games, challenges. But it's really preparation. They're a species that exists in a constant state of readiness. So we're going to ask them to fight our battles? Another advisor asked, sounding offended. No, Morin said firmly. We're going to ask them to teach us how to fight again, how to be brave again, how to remember what we once were before we became comfortable. He stood, addressing the entire council. Prepare a proposal. I want to meet with human leadership. We will offer a formal alliance, technology, resources, and territory in exchange for something more valuable. The example of their courage and the strength of their character. Will they accept? Soren asked. I believe they will. Because despite everything we've learned about their capacity for war, we've also learned something else. Humans want friends. They want to explore, to learn, to connect with others. They're driven by curiosity and hope as much as by survival instinct. Morin looked at a screen showing Dae-hyun and Lyra walking through the colony together, talking and laughing. My daughter is safe because one human couldn't walk past someone in need. That tells me everything I need to know about what kind of allies they'll be. We just need to prove we're worthy of that alliance. The research was complete. The Velrans understood humans now. Or at least understood enough. Humans were dangerous, yes, but they were also exactly what the Velran Empire needed. Now they just had to convince Earth's government of the same thing. The summit was held on Earth, in Geneva. The old city had hosted countless diplomatic meetings throughout human history. Now it would host something unprecedented. First contact negotiations with an alien empire. Dae-hyun didn't want to be there. He'd argued against it for days. He was an engineer, not a diplomat, but both sides insisted. The Velrans trusted him. Some human leaders trusted him, and everyone agreed his presence might help keep things calm. So there he sat, in a suit that didn't fit quite right, at a table with the most powerful humans in the solar system. Across from them sat High Chancellor Morin, his daughter Lyra, and a delegation of Velran advisors. The human delegation was led by Ambassador Hyejin Park, a sharp woman in her 60s who'd spent her career negotiating mining rights and colony disputes. This was slightly bigger than her usual work. Let me be direct, Ambassador Park said, once the formal greetings were finished. Your empire has been aware of humanity for at least 50 years, according to our records. You've observed us from a distance but never made contact. Now, suddenly, you want an alliance. Why? Moran didn't hesitate. Because we made a mistake. We saw you as young and primitive. We dismissed you. We were wrong. What changed your mind? Another human delegate asked. The rescue of your daughter? That was the catalyst, Moran admitted. But not the reason. The reason is that we finally looked at your species properly, and we realized you possess something we have lost. What's that? The will to fight. The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Ambassador Park leaned forward. Are you saying you want to use us as soldiers? No, Moran said firmly. We want to learn from you. We want our people to remember what courage looks like. We want to rebuild what we have allowed to decay over centuries of comfortable peace. He gestured, and a holographic display activated. It showed star maps, with sections marked in red. This is the Kreth Collective. They are a hive mind species, aggressive and expansionist. They have been testing our borders for 5 years. Each time they attack, we retreat. Each time we retreat, they grow bolder. At our current rate, they will invade Velran core systems within 20 years. And you think humans can help with this? Ambassador Park asked. I know you can. Your military analysts have already reviewed the data we provided. You understand the situation. One of the human military advisors spoke up, a general named Minso Huang. We've looked at the tactical reports. With respect, your forces should be able to handle the Kreth. You have superior technology and numbers. But we lack will, Moran said bluntly. Our people panic under sustained combat. We break formations at the first sign of casualties. We have forgotten how to endure hardship. The Kreth know this. They exploit it. So you want us to fight your war, Park repeated. We want you to stand with us as allies. Yes, we need military support. But more than that, we need your example. We need our young people to see what real courage looks like. We need to remember that some things are worth protecting, even at great cost. Lyra spoke up for the first time. My people have grown soft, not weak, but soft. We have not faced real adversity in so long that we've forgotten how to respond to it. When I was trapped in that burning ship, I believed I would die. The concept of someone risking their life to save me didn't even occur to me. That's how far we've fallen. She looked directly at Ambassador Park. Your people haven't forgotten how to sacrifice. You haven't forgotten how to be brave. We need that. Desperately. The human delegation conferred quietly among themselves. Daehyun could hear snippets of their conversation. Some were suspicious, worried this was manipulation. Others saw opportunity. A few genuinely wanted to help. Ambassador Park called for a recess. The Velrans left the room, and the humans debated among themselves. This could be a trap, one delegate said. Get us involved in their war, then turn on us when we're weakened. Or it could be a genuine opportunity, another countered. Access to their technology alone would advance us by centuries. Plus, if the Kreth are as dangerous as they say, we might face them eventually anyway. Better to fight them with allies. Everyone looked at Daehyun eventually. He'd been quiet the whole time. What do you think? Ambassador Park asked. You know them better than any of us. Daehyun took a breath. I think they're telling the truth. I've spent weeks with Lyra and the other Velrans. They're not warriors. They're not even particularly aggressive. They're more like scholars and artists who happen to have advanced weapons. That doesn't mean we can trust them. No, but it means they're probably desperate. And desperate people telling the truth looks a lot like desperate people lying. The question is, can we afford to ignore them? What do you mean? General Huang asked. If the Kreth are real and as bad as the Velrans say, then they represent a threat to this whole region of space, including us eventually. We could wait and see, let the Velrans fall, and then face the Kreth alone. Or we could act now, with allies, with Velran technology, and with time to prepare. That's surprisingly strategic thinking for an engineer, Park noted. Daehyun shrugged. I fix things. This feels like a situation that needs fixing before it breaks completely. The debate continued for hours. Finally, Ambassador Park made a decision. They would return to negotiations, but with conditions. When both sides reconvened, Park laid out humanity's terms. We're willing to discuss an alliance, but we need certain things guaranteed. Name them, Morin said. First, complete technology transfer, not selective sharing, full access to Velran scientific databases, manufacturing processes, everything. Agreed. Second, human colonies receive the same protections and rights as Velran worlds within the alliance structure. Agreed. Third, this alliance must be between equals. We won't be junior partners or hired soldiers. We contribute, you contribute, we decide together. Moran hesitated, then nodded. Agreed. Though I must warn you, some in our empire will resist this. They see humans as primitives. Then they'll learn otherwise, Park said firmly. Fourth condition, this alliance is defensive in nature. We help protect Velran worlds from the Kreth, but we're not getting involved in any offensive campaigns or conquests. We have no interest in conquest, Moran assured her. We just want to survive. The negotiations continued for 3 more days. Legal experts argued over treaty language. Military planners coordinated training programs. Scientists got excited about technology exchanges. Slowly, an alliance took shape. Daehyun watched it all with a mixture of pride and anxiety. He'd started this. His simple act of pulling someone from a fire had led to this moment. 2 civilizations coming together. On the final day, as documents were being prepared for signing, Moran approached Daehyun privately. You have said little during these talks, the High Chancellor observed. I'm not a diplomat. I just told them what I saw. And what did you see? People who need help and are brave enough to ask for it. That's worth respecting. Moran's patterns pulsed with what seemed like amusement. You continue to surprise me, Daehyun Kim. Most beings would use their position for personal gain. You could have demanded anything during these negotiations. Wealth, power, territory, but you said nothing. I already have what I want, Daehyun replied. A job I like, people I care about, a chance to help. What else do I need? A remarkable perspective, though I notice you include people you care about in that list. Does that include my daughter? Daehyun felt his face heat. Lyra's a good friend. She speaks of you constantly. Your courage, your kindness, your odd human habit of making terrible jokes to diffuse tension. They're not terrible jokes. They are absolutely terrible, Morin said, but his tone was warm. But they make her laugh. She has not laughed so freely in many years. For that alone, you have my gratitude. The signing ceremony was broadcast across both human and Velran space. Ambassador Park and High Chancellor Morin placed their marks on the treaty documents. Cameras flashed. People cheered. The Terran-Velran alliance was officially born. That night, there was a celebration. Humans and Velrans mingling awkwardly, trying each other's food, attempting to understand each other's music. It was chaotic and strange and wonderful. Lyra found Daehyun on a balcony, looking up at the stars. Having second thoughts? She asked. Just wondering what comes next. Whatever it is, we face it together now. Yeah, he smiled. That's a good thing, I think. I know it is, Lyra said confidently. Because if humans are half as brave as you, and Velrans can learn to be half as brave as humans, then the Kreth don't stand a chance. Daehyun hoped she was right. Because somewhere out there in the dark, the enemy was coming. And soon, the alliance would be tested. 6 months after the treaty signing, the Kreth attacked in force. The first world to fall was a Velran agricultural colony called Mirath. Population, 40,000. The Kreth fleet arrived without warning, overwhelming the small defense force within hours. By the time reinforcements arrived, the colony was gone. Not destroyed, consumed. The Kreth had stripped every resource, every building, every living thing. They left behind a dead rock. Dae-hyun watched the reports from the engineering bay of the VNS Eternal Lights, a Velran warship he'd been assigned to. He wasn't a soldier, but the Alliance needed engineers who understood both human and Velran systems. So here he was, floating in space, preparing for war. The ship's commander was a Velran named Torin Vel Hask, the same military analyst who'd studied human combat capabilities. He was more prepared for war than most Velrans, but even he looked shaken by the Mirath attack. "They're moving faster than we predicted," Torin said, studying tactical displays. "And they're more aggressive. This isn't testing anymore. This is invasion." Human forces were spread thin. The Alliance was new, and coordinating two different military systems took time. But ships were being deployed as quickly as possible. Earth sent 3 carrier groups. Mars colony contributed 2 more. Even the small mining colonies sent what they could. Dae-hyun's job was to keep the hybrid systems running. Human weapons fitted onto Velran ships. Velran shields adapted to human power systems. It was like trying to connect 2 completely different machines and hoping they worked together. He was elbow-deep in a power coupling when Lyra found him. She wore a military uniform now, with insignia marking her as a tactical advisor. Her father had insisted she serve, to show the Velran people that even the High Chancellor's family would fight. "Another colony was hit," she said quietly. "Torin's Reach. 30,000 dead." Dae-hyun's hands stopped moving. "Did anyone escape?" "A few. Most of the evacuation ships were destroyed during launch." He closed his eyes. Numbers on a screen were one thing. Real people dying was another. "The main fleet is gathering at Torin's Gate," Lyra continued. "It's a choke point. If we can hold it, we stop the Kreth advance into the core systems. If we lose it..." "We lose everything," Dae-hyun finished. "My father wants this ship there. You're coming with us." He looked at her. Really looked at her. She'd changed over the past months. The delicate diplomat he'd pulled from the fire was gone. In her place stood someone harder, more determined. War did that to people. "Are you scared?" he asked. "Terrified," she admitted, "but I can't let that stop me. Too many people are depending on us." "Yeah," Dae-hyun said. "I know the feeling." The trip to Torin's Gate took 3 days at maximum faster-than-light speed. When they dropped back into normal space, the sight that greeted them was both inspiring and terrifying. Hundreds of ships filled the void. Velran vessels, graceful and glowing. Human ships, blocky and aggressive. They floated in formation, waiting. Nearby was the gate itself, a massive space station that controlled the hyperspace lane. Whoever held the gate controlled access to dozens of systems. Admiral Hee-jin Park commanded the human forces. Dae-hyun recognized the name. She'd been at the treaty signing, though he hadn't met her personally. She was a legend in the human navy, known for aggressive tactics and never backing down. High Chancellor Moraine himself commanded the Velran fleet from his flagship. This battle was too important to delegate. The combined fleet had maybe 300 ships. The Kreth, according to long-range sensors, were coming with over 900. The odds were not good. Dae-hyun worked constantly, preparing for battle. He reinforced the power systems, checked the weapons, made sure every hybrid connection would hold under stress. Other engineers, both human and Velran, did the same across the fleet. When the Kreth finally arrived, it was like watching a wall of darkness approach. Their ships were organic-looking, grown rather than built. They moved in perfect synchronization, the hive mind controlling every vessel with flawless coordination. The first shots were fired from extreme range. Energy beams and missiles crossed the void. Ships on both sides began taking damage. All vessels, maintain formation. Admiral Park's voice came over the communication channel. Don't break, don't retreat. We hold this line. But the Velran ships immediately started pulling back. Years of peaceful habit overrode training. When their shields took damage, they retreated to recharge. When they saw fellow ships destroyed, they panicked. Velran fleet, return to formation, Moran commanded. But his people were already scattering. The human ships stayed put. They kept firing, kept advancing, kept fighting even as their numbers dwindled. Daehyun watched it happen from the engineering deck's monitors, his heart in his throat. We're losing, Lyra said beside him. She stood at a tactical station, trying to coordinate what remained of the Velran formation. Our people can't handle this. They're not ready. On the screen, a human destroyer took a direct hit. Its hull split open, atmosphere venting into space. But even as it died, it kept firing, kept fighting, taking 2 Kreth ships with it before it exploded. Something changed in the Velran crews when they saw that. The retreat slowed. Ships started turning back toward the fight. Look at them, someone whispered. Look at the humans. They're not afraid. That wasn't quite true. Daehyun knew the human crews were terrified. But fear didn't stop them. They'd made a promise to stand and fight, and they were keeping it. A Kreth boarding party breached the Eternal Light's hull. Alarms blared. Security teams rushed to respond. But they were overwhelmed. The Kreth were fast and vicious, tearing through the ship's corridors. Engineering is their target, Torin announced over the ship-wide channel. If they take it, we're dead in the water. All available personnel, defend engineering. Daehyun grabbed a plasma cutter, the closest thing to a weapon he had. Around him, other engineers did the same, preparing to defend their workspace. The Kreth burst through the door. They looked like nightmares, all sharp edges and too many limbs. They moved with perfect coordination, every action calculated by the hive mind. Daehyun didn't think. He just reacted. He'd spent 6 months working on this ship, learning every system, every weak point. He knew exactly where to cut to make things explode. He severed a plasma conduit. Superheated gas vented directly into the Kreth formation. They scattered, their coordination momentarily disrupted. Other engineers followed his lead. Fires erupted, systems overloaded. The engineering bay became a chaotic battlefield of improvised weapons and desperate defense. Then Lyra was there, carrying a proper weapon. She fired with surprising accuracy, dropping Kreth attackers. Behind her came Velran security forces, finally responding in force. Daehyun, get down! Lyra shouted. He dropped. Energy beams passed over his head. When he looked up, the Kreth were retreating, driven back by concentrated fire. Lyra pulled him to his feet. Are you hurt? I'm fine. Is engineering secure? For now. But the ship took heavy damage. Can you keep us operational? Daehyun looked around. Half his team was dead or wounded. Systems were failing. But the reactor was still running. Yeah, he said. We can keep fighting. And they did. For 6 more hours, the battle raged. Ships died on both sides. The space around Torin's gate became a graveyard of metal and bodies. But slowly, impossibly, the tide turned. The Velrans, inspired by human courage, stopped retreating. They held the line. They fought back. When ships took damage, they kept fighting. When friends died, they didn't break. The Kreth had never faced enemies who wouldn't flee. Their tactics relied on creating panic and exploiting it. But humans didn't panic, and the Velrans were learning not to. Admiral Park led a desperate assault directly into the Kreth center. Her carrier took massive damage, but she kept pushing forward, tearing apart enemy formations. The Velrans followed her, their ships glowing bright with weapons fire. The Kreth broke first. For the first time in their expansion, they faced enemies who refused to surrender. It confused the hive mind. Their perfect coordination faltered. When High Chancellor Morin destroyed the Kreth command ship with a direct hit, the enemy fleet began to retreat. They'd lost over half their ships. The Alliance had lost more than that, but they'd held the gate. The battle was won. Daehyun collapsed in the engineering bay, exhausted beyond words. Around him, survivors tended to wounds and assessed damage. The ship would need weeks of repairs. Lyra sat down beside him, her uniform scorched and torn. "We did it." "We survived," Daehyun corrected. "That's not quite the same thing." "No," she agreed, "but it's enough. We proved we could stand together. We proved we could fight." On the ship's main screen, they could see Admiral Park's carrier. It was barely holding together, but still operational, still fighting. That's what had changed everything. That refusal to give up. "Your people saved us today," Lyra said softly. "Without the human example, we would have broken. We would have lost everything." "You saved yourselves," Daehyun replied. "We just reminded you that you could." The war was far from over. The Kreth would attack again, more battles would come, more people would die. But something fundamental had changed at Torrens Gate. The Velrans had remembered how to be warriors, and the humans had proven themselves as allies worth having. The Alliance had been tested and had held. The war continued for another year. Battles were fought across dozens of systems. Colonies were evacuated. Ships were lost. People died. But the Alliance held. The Kreth learned that the easy prey they'd expected was gone. Every attack met fierce resistance. The Velrans, fighting alongside humans, had rediscovered their warrior spirit. They no longer retreated at the first sign of trouble. They stood their ground and fought back. Slowly, painfully, the tide turned. The Kreth expansion stopped, then reversed. The hive mind seemed to recognize that this fight wasn't worth the cost. They pulled back to their original territory and stopped attacking. The war ended not with a grand battle, but with silence. The Kreth simply stopped coming. Daehyun spent that year moving between ships and stations, fixing things, building things, keeping the fleet operational. He lost count of how many close calls he survived, how many times he thought he'd die in the cold vacuum of space, but he survived. So did Lyra. They spent what little free time they had together, finding comfort in each other's presence. Somewhere during those long months, friendship became something more. Neither of them said it out loud, but they both knew. When peace finally came, it felt strange. The constant tension disappeared, leaving behind an emptiness that took time to fill. Daehyun returned to New Hanzhong briefly. The colony had grown during the war, becoming a major supply hub. The people who remembered him as just an engineer now treated him like a hero. He hated it. "I just did my job," he told anyone who would listen. Same as everyone else. But they didn't see it that way. To them, he was the man who started it all. The man who saved an alien girl and changed the course of history. 6 months after the last Kreth attack, High Chancellor Morin announced a grand ceremony. It would mark the anniversary of Daehyun's rescue of Lyra and celebrate the alliance that had saved both their peoples. The ceremony was held on the Velran homeworld, in their capital city of Torrens Light. Daehyun had never seen anything so beautiful. The buildings glowed with bioluminescent patterns, creating art out of architecture. Gardens filled the spaces between structures, mixing plants from dozens of worlds. Billions of Velrans watched via holographic broadcast. Every human colony tuned in. This was more than just a ceremony. It was a moment that would define the relationship between two species for generations. Daehyun wore formal clothes that felt uncomfortable. He stood on a massive platform in the city's central plaza, surrounded by dignitaries from both human and Velran governments. Admiral Park was there. So were dozens of other military leaders, politicians, and important people whose names he couldn't remember. Lyra stood beside him, wearing elaborate robes that marked her as the High Chancellor's daughter. She'd been quiet all morning, nervous about something she wouldn't explain. High Chancellor Morin stepped forward to address the assembled billions. His voice carried across the plaza and through every screen in Alliance space. 1 year ago, he began, I stood on a human world and met a man who changed everything. Dae-hyun Kim pulled my daughter from a burning ship. He risked his life for a stranger, for an alien he had never met and knew nothing about. The crowd listened in absolute silence. I called that act the Crimson Honor, the highest courage our people recognize. But I was wrong. It was something more than that. It was a reminder of what we had forgotten, that some things are worth fighting for, that some things are worth dying for, that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Moran's patterns pulsed brightly. The Kreth came for us with overwhelming force. By all logic, we should have fallen. Our people had grown soft. We had forgotten how to endure. We would have broken under the assault. He paused, letting the weight of those words settle. But we didn't break, because humans showed us what true courage looked like. They stood beside us when they could have stayed safe in their own systems. They fought when they could have watched us fall. They died protecting worlds that were not their own. Morin turned to face Dae-hyun directly. And it all began with one man who couldn't walk past someone in need, who saw another being suffering and ran toward the fire instead of away from it. The High Chancellor did something then that shocked everyone watching. He knelt, not a slight bow, a full kneel, both knees on the ground, his head lowered. On behalf of the Velran Empire, all 147 worlds, I bow to humanity. I bow to the courage you showed us. I bow to the friendship you offered. I bow to the sacrifices you made. Every Velran on the platform followed suit. Ministers, generals, scholars, all of them knelt. Then, across the plaza, the crowd began kneeling. Thousands at first, then tens of thousands. The wave spread outward, visible from orbit. Across Velran space, billions of beings knelt in synchronized respect. Dae-hyun felt panic rising in his chest. This was wrong. All wrong. Please, he said, his voice amplified by the sound system. Please stand up. Morin raised his head but didn't stand. We kneel to honor you. Then honor me by standing, Dae-hyun replied. I didn't save Lyra so that an empire would bow to me. I did it because it was right, because she needed help, because that's what any decent person should do. He looked out at the sea of kneeling Velrans. You don't owe me this. You don't owe humanity this. We're not your masters or your saviors. We're your friends, your allies, and friends stand together. They don't kneel. Moran's expression shifted. Surprise gave way to understanding. You refuse our submission? Yes, I refuse. Completely and totally. Dae-hyun's voice grew stronger. Stand up, all of you. Because if this alliance means anything, it means we're equals, partners. Not one species serving another. Slowly, Morin rose to his feet. The other Velrans followed. Across the plaza, the crowd stood again. The High Chancellor stepped closer to Dae-hyun. Once again, you surprise me. Any other being would accept such honor, would take the power offered. I don't want power over you. I just want to keep fixing things and helping people. And maybe, he glanced at Lyra, spend time with someone I care about. Morin's patterns pulsed with what could only be amusement. My daughter speaks of little else but you. It seems you've won more than just a military alliance. Lyra's own patterns flared with embarrassment, but she smiled. Then let me change this ceremony's purpose, Moran announced, speaking to the crowd again. We knelt in respect. You asked us to stand as equals. Very well. Let this mark not submission, but partnership, not debt, but friendship. The Velran Empire and humanity will stand together, Not because either is superior, but because we choose to, because we are stronger together than apart. The crowd erupted in sound, not quite cheering in the human sense, but a harmonic resonance that filled the air with beautiful noise. "And let there be one more announcement," Moran continued. He looked at Dae-hyun and Lyra. "If both parties are willing, I would support a formal union between my daughter and this extraordinary human. Not for politics, though it would cement our alliance, but because I have seen how they look at each other. Because I have learned from humans that love matters more than duty." Dae-hyun's mind went blank. Lyra grabbed his hand, her patterns glowing bright with hope and nervousness. "Well," she whispered, "what do you think?" What did he think? He thought she was amazing. He thought the past year had shown him exactly who she was: brave, kind, determined. He thought that somewhere between pulling her from a fire and fighting beside her in a war, he'd fallen in love. "Yes," he said simply, "if you'll have me." "I pulled you back from death once," Lyra replied. "I'm not letting you go now." The ceremony transformed into a celebration. Music played, mixing human and Velron styles. Food was shared. People from two worlds mingled and laughed together. Later, as the sun set over Torin's light, Dae-hyun and Lyra stood together on a balcony overlooking the city. "Do you ever think about how strange this is?" Lyra asked. "One moment changed everything. If you'd walked away from that fire, none of this happens. No alliance, no victory, no us." "I couldn't have walked away," Dae-hyun said. "That's not who I am." "I know. That's why I love you." They were simple words, but they carried weight. Across the city, across space, two civilizations were building something new together, a future neither could have imagined a year ago. 10 years later, Dae-hyun Kim returned to New Hanjeong. The colony had become a thriving city, a hub of trade and culture between human and Velran worlds. The mining operation he'd once worked at was now a historical site, preserved as the place where everything changed. He brought his children with him, 2 daughters and a son, all half human and half Velran. They had their mother's bioluminescent patterns and their father's dark eyes. They were the first of their kind, and they wouldn't be the last. "This is where you saved Mom?" his oldest daughter asked, looking at the preserved crash site. "This is where I met her," Dae-hyun corrected. "The saving part came later, and it went both ways." His son, always the practical one, asked, "Do you wish you'd done something different, knowing everything that came after?" Dae-hyun thought about it. The war, the deaths, the pain, but also the alliance, the friendship, the love, the future his children represented. "No," he said, "I'd do it exactly the same way." Because that was the truth. Given the choice between safety and doing what was right, he'd always choose right. That's what humans did. It wasn't always logical, it wasn't always safe, but it was who they were. And it had changed the galaxy. The Terran-Velran alliance had grown over the decade. Other species joined, attracted by the example of 2 very different peoples working together. The Kreth had been contained, their aggression channeled into negotiation instead of war. Peace wasn't perfect, but it was holding. Dae-hyun had never wanted to be famous. He'd never wanted to be a hero. He just wanted to fix things and help people. But sometimes helping one person was enough to fix everything. As he watched his children play in the gardens where earth plants and Velran flowers grew side by side, Dae-hyun smiled. This was the future worth fighting for, not empires kneeling or species dominating. Just people of all kinds, standing together, choosing to be brave and kind. It had all started with a fire and a choice, and it had led to this, a galaxy learning that courage and compassion could change everything. That was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.